Nora Whitfield had a good life. She knew this the way you know the weight of a familiar coat, without thinking about it, without gratitude, just the daily fact of it settling on her shoulders every morning. The kitchen smelled like coffee before she ever got there because she had set the timer the night before. The crossword sat folded on the counter. The dahlias in the back garden leaned toward the window like they were listening for something. She was 52 years old, and she had built this life one careful decision at a time, and it fit. She had 3 adult children who called on Sundays and visited at Christmas and sent photographs of grandchildren she was not yet old enough to feel old about. She had taught 5th grade for 26 years and retired with a card signed by over 200 former students, several of whom she had genuinely liked. She had a house that stayed exactly as she left it, which she told herself was a practical thing and not a lonely one, and mostly she believed it. Her husband, Robert, had died 15 years ago. Heart attack, a Tuesday morning, nothing dramatic, nothing that gave her time to prepare. She had grieved the way serious people grieve, completely, and then quietly, and then she had put one foot in front of the other until the days started moving again on their own. She did not consider herself a sad person. She considered herself a person who had already had the thing most people spent their whole lives looking for, and she was grateful, and she was done. That was the word she used, privately, when her daughter Emma brought up the subject. Done. You're not done, Emma said. You're 52, not dead. I'm aware of the difference, Nora said. Then try the app. Just once. You don't have to like it. Nora did not try the app. Emma set it up for her anyway, on a Sunday afternoon in March while Nora was in the garden, and by the time Nora came back inside with dirt on her knees and a dahlia tuber in each hand, there was a profile with her best photograph and a short biography that made her sound warmer and more available than she felt. She did not delete it. That was the whole decision. She did not delete it, which was not the same as wanting it, but which was also not nothing. 3 weeks passed. She received messages from men who seemed to be describing themselves the way someone might describe a used car: reliable, good condition, some mileage. She responded to none of them. The app collected dust the way things do when you put them in a drawer and decide to deal with them later. Then, on a Wednesday evening in April, while she was eating soup and watching nothing in particular on television, her phone lit up. The message read, "You teach 5th grade. My daughter is a 5th grade teacher. Small world. I run cattle outside Amarillo. This is probably not your thing." She read it twice. Then a third time. "This is probably not your thing." She had received 41 messages in 3 weeks. Not one of them had included an apology for existing. Not one of them had offered her an exit before she even stepped through the door. She did not know if this made him self-aware or just sad, and she found herself responding before she finished deciding. "I taught 5th grade," she wrote back. "Retired. Your punctuation needs work, but I appreciate the honesty." His name was Dale Cruz. He was 58 years old. He had a cattle ranch on the flat, wide edge of the Texas Panhandle, 2 dogs whose names she would not learn for another month, and a daughter named Carla who thought the whole idea was going to end in disaster. He had been widowed 7 years ago. His wife had been sick for 2 of those years before she passed, which meant he had been alone in one way or another for nearly a decade, and he carried this the way men who work outdoors carry things, without complaint, without particular display, just quietly present in the way he moved and spoke and left long silences in conversations without apologizing for them. They exchanged messages for 2 weeks. He was not charming. He did not try to be. He answered her questions directly and asked some of his own, and once, when she made a joke about the crossword, he said, "I don't do crosswords but I respect people who do," with what she could only assume was complete sincerity. She agreed to meet him at a diner in a small town that was equidistant between her house and his ranch, which put it in the middle of a stretch of highway that had nothing on either side but sky and the occasional truck stop. She arrived 7 minutes early because she was always early and she believed this said something decent about a person. He was already there. He was standing near the entrance, not sitting, which she noticed immediately. He had the kind of face that had spent decades looking at the horizon, not handsome in any way that would make you stop on a street, but settled, like everything about him had decided what it was going to be and made peace with it. He wore a clean shirt and boots that were not new. "Nora," he said, and held out his hand. "Dale," she said, and shook it. They sat down. She had prepared for the particular misery she associated with first dates at her age, the cautious inventory of another person's history, the polite performance of interest, the long pauses that nobody knew how to fill. She had brought, mentally, a set of exit strategies. She had planned to stay 1 hour. She stayed 2.5. He talked about the ranch with the specific, unhurried love of a person describing the place they were made for. He talked about his daughter with a kind of baffled tenderness. She thinks I have no idea what I'm doing, and she's probably right, and about his late wife with plain honesty, not grief exactly, but the acknowledgement of it. He apologized twice for talking too much. She told him she had been a teacher for 26 years and was constitutionally incapable of being bored by someone who actually meant what they said. He looked at her for a moment after she said that, the way a person looks when they hear something they needed to hear and didn't know it. She drove home on an empty highway with the window down and the warm night air coming in and told herself that nothing had happened. It was a nice dinner. He was a decent man. Nothing had happened. She knew that wasn't true. She also knew she was not ready to know it was true, so she set it aside like a letter she would open when she was stronger, and she went inside and watered the dahlias and went to bed. He called 3 days later. He did not text, he called, which she found either very old-fashioned or very deliberate, and decided it was both. They talked for 40 minutes. He asked if she would like to come to the ranch the following weekend, and she said she would think about it. She went. The ranch was exactly what she had expected, which was to say it was large and flat and honest-looking, with a porch that needed painting and a dog that came to greet her before she even got out of the car. Dale was in the barn when she arrived, and he came out with his sleeves rolled up and a look on his face like he was genuinely glad she had come, which he was, and which he did not bother to disguise. She met the dogs. Their names were Biscuit and Earl, which she found immediately and completely correct. They had lunch. He showed her around the property with a quiet pride that was not boastful, just honest. She asked questions and he answered them, and she learned more about cattle ranching in 2 hours than she had in 52 years of living. He did not condescend. He did not perform. He simply told her the truth about the thing he knew best, which she understood, because she had spent 26 years doing exactly the same thing with 10-year-olds. That was the afternoon she understood that she liked him. Not in the breathless way of younger years. Not the way that makes you foolish and reckless and willing to rewrite your whole life in an afternoon. But in the solid, uncomplicating way of recognizing something familiar, the way you recognize a bird call or a particular smell of rain. Something that meant, yes, that. I know that. The months that followed were quiet and unhurried, the way the best things often are. He drove 4 hours on a Saturday in September to fix the porch railing at her house, because she had mentioned in passing that it was loose, and she had not asked him to come. She did not know he was coming until his truck pulled into the driveway. She stood on the porch and looked at him and said, "I didn't ask you to do that." "I know," he said. "You got a level anywhere." She made him dinner. He stayed until 10. They sat on the porch after the dishes were done and talked about nothing important, his daughter's upcoming birthday, the crossword she had finished that morning, a book she was reading that she thought he might like. He said he would try it. He probably wouldn't, but he said it. She met his daughter Carla in October, at a dinner that was not quite casual enough to be casual. Carla was 31 and had her father's directness and her late mother's eyes, and she watched Nora the way a person watches a new variable being introduced into an equation they've already solved. Not unkind. Just careful. After dinner, while Dale was in the kitchen, Carla said, "He's been alone a long time." "I know," Nora said. "He doesn't say when things are hard for him. I've noticed." Carla looked at her for a long moment. "He talks about you differently than he talks about other things," she said. Then she went to help her father with the dishes. Nora held that sentence for a long time. That same month, on a night that had turned cold faster than expected, they sat on Dale's porch after dinner and he fell asleep in his chair before 9 o'clock, which she found so quietly human that it did something to her she couldn't name. She sat in the dark for a while. The sky out there was enormous, the kind of sky that doesn't exist near cities, and she let herself feel the particular peace of being next to someone who was simply there. She had forgotten this. Not the person, not the love, but the specific comfort of presence. The way a room changes when it is shared. She drove home before he woke up. She cried for about 20 minutes on the highway, not from sadness exactly, but from the specific ache of something returning that you had convinced yourself was gone. She did not call it grief and she did not call it joy. She let it be what it was, unnamed, and then she drove the rest of the way home in the quiet. The following spring, on an afternoon in late April that was warm and without ceremony, Dale said something that rearranged everything. They were sitting on his porch again. The porch had become the place where the real conversations happened, she had noticed, and he was looking out at the land the way he often did, calm and unhurried, and he said, "I think I'd like to do this for the rest of my life." He did not look at her when he said it. He said it the way he said most things, plainly, like a fact he had checked and found to be accurate. She knew exactly what he meant. She said, "I should probably head home soon," and she did, and she didn't call him for 11 days. In those 11 days she repotted every plant on her back step. She finished a crossword on a Tuesday and another on a Thursday and started a third she did not finish. She stood in front of the photograph of Robert on the shelf in the hallway and had a conversation she had no intention of ever describing to anyone. She sat with herself the way you sit with a difficult thing, not fighting it, not resolving it, just sitting. Emma called on day 9. "What's going on with you?" "Nothing," Nora said. "Mom." Nora looked out the kitchen window at the dahlias. They were just beginning to come up again. She had planted them in February, in the cold, on a kind of faith. "I'm scared," she said. Emma was quiet for a moment. "That means it's real," she said. Nora didn't answer. She pulled a dead leaf off the dahlia on the windowsill and let it drop. She called Dale on day 12. He answered on the second ring, the way he always did. He did not mention the 11 days. She did not explain them. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing significant, and then she said she would come out on Thursday. Thursday. The least romantic day of the week. No occasion's shadow, just a Thursday in May when the drive out was flat and gold and she arrived to find him on the porch with the dogs, which was where she had always found him, which was exactly right. He was holding something. She noticed it when she came up the steps. A small box, not new, worn at the corners, the kind that had been in a drawer or a glove compartment for longer than was entirely dignified. He did not get down on one knee. She had always privately thought that would undo her, the formality of it, the theater, and he seemed to understand this without being told. He stood and he looked at her, straight and simple and completely himself, and he said, "I know it's not your thing to need things. I'm not asking you to need it. I'm just asking." She stood on that porch, in the May light, with Biscuit sitting against her left leg and the flat Texas sky going on forever in every direction, and she thought about her good life. The dahlias. The Tuesday crossword. The coffee timer set the night before. The quiet house that stayed exactly as she left it. All of it was real. All of it was hers. None of it was leaving. And she said yes. They were married 11 months later, on a Saturday in April again, she noted, the same month he had sent the message about her punctuation, with 50 people on the ranch and her dahlias in every arrangement. She had planted them in February, specifically for this, and had worried the whole winter that they wouldn't come in on time, and they had come in on time, which she chose to take as something. His daughter Carla cried during the ceremony. Emma cried. Her son Marcus, who had not cried at anything since he was 14 years old, cried in the parking area where he thought nobody could see him. Nora did not cry. She stood in the April light and held Dale's hand and was completely present in the way she had learned, over the course of a long and sometimes hard life, to be completely present in the moments that deserved it. She moved half her things to the ranch. She kept her house. She planted dahlias in both yards. Years later, in a conversation she had not expected to have, someone asked her whether she had ever believed she would find love again at 52. She thought about it for a moment, the genuine, unhurried thought of a person who does not give answers she doesn't mean. "I didn't think it had passed me by," she said finally. "I thought I'd already used mine up. Turns out that's not how it works." The person who asked her waited for more. She didn't give any more.